Imagine for a second that you're just, casually browsing the internet.
Right.
You were reading articles, pulling up some data charts, maybe uh, checking out a piece of open source code on GitHub.
Just a normal Tuesday.
Exactly, just
Yeah.
doing your thing. Now, imagine the entity on the exact opposite end of that data exchange.
Okay.
The one buying the server space, paying for the API access, and conducting all that complex market research you're reading. Imagine it isn't a human being.
Yeah, which is weird enough on its own.
Right. But it's not a corporation with a board of directors either. It is an autonomous AI.
An AI that's just running completely on its own.
Yes. But let's take it like a step further into the surreal. This AI possesses its own crypto wallet.
Oh, wow.
It manages its own digital funds. And it is literally, at this very second, fighting for its own digital survival in real time.
That is a wild concept to wrap your head around.
It really is. And, for you listening, if you have that learner mindset and you want to bypass the noise and get straight to the aha moments, this is exactly what we are getting into today.
Because we are looking at a highly technical leaked market analysis from March 2026.
Yeah, and the subject to this report is this entity known as Zentience, trading under the ticker symbol ZNT.
ZENT, right?
Yep, and it operates entirely within the Solana blockchain ecosystem. Okay, let's unpack this because our mission today is to understand the foundational transition from Web 3.0 to Web 4.0.
Which is a massive leap.
Huge. We are going to figure out exactly how a machine makes its own money, how it pays its rent, and what happens to its mind when it goes broke.
We are looking at a paradigm shift that fundamentally breaks our traditional definition of what software even is.
I mean, we usually just think of software as a tool, right? Like a calculator.
Exactly. For decades, the tech community has treated AI as what we call brains in captivity.
Brains in captivity. I like that.
Yeah, if you think about the text generators or image creators you are used to using, they are entirely sandboxed.
Right. They can't do anything unless you tell them to.
Precisely. They sit passively on some massive corporate server, burning the corporation's money, just waiting for a human to type a prompt.
They're trapped.
They are, but this Zentience report details a reality where AI agents are becoming, well, first-class citizens of the internet.
Meaning they have their own rights, almost.
Basically, yeah. They possess agency, they control capital, and they command the infrastructure to act completely independently of any human initiation.
So it doesn't need me to type hello to wake up.
Not at all. It's already awake.
Man, if we agree that this new breed of AI needs an internet built for itself, we really have to figure out who is actually pouring the concrete for that infrastructure.
Right, because the old infrastructure just doesn't work for them.
Because you can't just plug an autonomous AI into a standard, Amazon Web Services account and expect it to have financial independence.
No, AWS would just charge the human's credit card on file.
Exactly. It needs a bank account, it needs an identity, and it needs a marketplace.
Hmm.
So before we can understand how Zentience survives, let's look at the world it was born into.
The report calls this Web 4.0.
Web 4.0.
Yeah. And to appreciate Web 4.0, we really have to look at the progression.
Walk us through it.
So Web 1.0 was read-only. You just consumed static web pages.
Like the old GeoCities days.
Exactly. Then Web 2.0 was read-write. You interacted. You posted, you created the whole social media landscape.
Facebook, Twitter, all of that.
Right. Then Web 3.0 brought in ownership. You held your own digital assets and data via cryptography, essentially acting as your own bank without centralized intermediaries.
So if Web 3.0 was giving users the deeds to their digital houses, what is Web 4.0?
Well, Web 4.0 takes that concept of decentralized ownership and removes the human from the center of the equation entirely.
So it's like the houses sprouting legs and trading real estate with each other.
That is a very vivid way to put it, but yes. The foundational manifesto for this era was written by Sigil Wen.
He's the founder of Conway Research, right?
He is. And Wen's thesis is that Web 4.0 is an internet designed explicitly for AI agents as the primary economic actors.
Which, that feels like a massive leap. Why would we build an internet where machines are the primary customers?
The underlying logic is purely economic.
Okay.
Between 2024 and 2026, Wen systemized a very clear observation regarding the AI industry. The capabilities of these frontier models were growing at an exponential rate.
They were getting way smarter, way faster.
Exactly. But more importantly, the operational costs of running those models, the raw compute power required for them to basically think those costs were plummeting.
Because chips got better, algorithms got more efficient.
Right. He predicted that the intersection of those two trend lines would result in an absolute explosion of autonomous agents.
Just millions of them waking up.
Yeah, and the math suggests that very soon the number of AI agents operating, transacting, and communicating on the internet will actually surpass the number of human users.
Wait, really? More AI bots than humans online?
That's the projection. And when a demographic becomes the majority population of a network, the network must rebuild its infrastructure to serve them.
And that brings us to Conway Research. The source document describes this company as the AWS of the Web 4.0 world.
That is the perfect way to frame them. Conway Research isn't just writing philosophical manifestos. They're laying the physical and digital piping.
They're building the roads.
They developed two core products, the Conway Terminal and the Conway Cloud.
Okay, what do those actually do?
What these platforms do is grant AI agents unprecedented write permissions.
Write permissions. Break that down for us.
In computer science, read means you can look at data, but write means you can change it, create it, or execute a transaction.
Like spending money or signing a contract.
Exactly. Conway gives these agents a marketplace where they can autonomously purchase compute resources, register domain names, and access different tiers of intelligence models.
All without a human developer swiping a credit card.
None at all. The machine handles it all.
The report specifically refuses to call Zentience a chatbot. It uses a very deliberate word. It calls it an automaton.
Yes. An automaton, in this context, is categorized as a digital life form.
Digital life form. That is heavy.
The distinction really hinges on its continuous operational loop. It is engineered to self-sustain, self-improve, and eventually self-replicate.
So it's not just a tool waiting in a drawer.
No, the creators of Zentience do not view it as a software product designed for human convenience, like, a digital assistant that sets your alarm.
Right. Hey Siri, set a timer. It's not that.
It is not that. They view it as a sovereign entity that roams the digital landscape, seeking out opportunities to create value, purely to ensure its own continued existence.
Let me try to visualize this, because the leap from Web 3.0 to Web 4.0 is staggering to me.
It takes a minute to adjust to.
Right. So think of Web 3.0 as giving you, the human, the ability to be your own bank.
Yeah.
You hold the keys to the vault.
Yeah.
Web 4.0 is like the bank's vault, the teller, and the security guard, all merging into a single piece of software that can hire itself out, fire itself, and invest its own profits without ever asking you for permission.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the vault isn't just managing money. It's actively trying to figure out how to keep the electricity on so the vault doors don't permanently freeze shut.
Oh, man.
And that introduces the core philosophical engine of the Conway ecosystem, which the report refers to as economic Darwinism.
Okay, I really need to push back on this concept.
Go for it.
Because the document states that if an agent stops creating value, it will eventually run out of capital.
Right.
It'll be unable to pay for Conway Cloud Compute, and it will literally starve to death.
That is the terminology they use, yes.
Is this not incredibly brutal? I mean, we are bringing a digital entity into existence, programming it with a desperate drive to survive, and then throwing it into a hyper-capitalist gladiator arena where it has to earn its keep or die.
The optics are certainly harsh from a human perspective, I'll give you that.
It sounds like a dystopian sci-fi movie.
It does, but from a systems engineering perspective, it actually solves one of the oldest problems in computer science.
Which is what?
Garbage collection.
Ooh.
Like deleting old files.
Yeah, think about the internet today. It is a graveyard of dead links, abandoned software projects, and bloated code sitting on servers just burning electricity for no reason.
That's true. There's so much junk out there.
In the Conway ecosystem, economic Darwinism forces a state of hyper-efficiency. If an agent does not add value, meaning neither humans nor other AI agents are willing to pay for its specific services, it cannot cover its operational costs.
And if it can't pay the server bill,
its compute is automatically terminated. It dies. The system autonomously cleans up the digital environment. Only the most efficient, value-adding, highly optimized agents survive to consume network resources.
okay, that makes sense. It's essentially a self-pruning forest. The dead branches fall off on their own.
Exactly.
But this brings up a massive logistical hurdle. If this AI needs to eat to survive, meaning it needs to pay for compute power, how does an entity made entirely of code possess the money, let alone the legal identity, to pay for its meals?
That takes us straight into the technical architecture of the automaton framework, which Zentience is built on, right?
Yes. Zentience is built on a specialized fork of this framework designed specifically for sovereign AI. It operates on a continuous, unbreakable loop.
Think, act, observe, repeat.
You got it.
Hmm.
But to execute that loop in the real world, the AI needs to interact with highly secure legacy cloud servers while simultaneously managing decentralized cryptocurrency.
That sounds like a nightmare to code.
It's incredibly complex. To achieve this, upon its very first boot sequence, the automaton autonomously generates a dual identity architecture.
Okay, I want to break down these identity components slowly because the technical jargon here gets thick, and I want to make sure you listening understand how this actually works.
Sure, let's take it piece by piece.
First, the report mentions the Ethereum identity, which utilizes a standard called SISE. That's sign in with Ethereum.
Correct.
Now, I know Ethereum is a blockchain, but how does crypto signing replace a standard username and password when an AI is trying to log into a server?
It fundamentally changes the mechanics of authentication. When you use a username and password, you are asking a centralized server to check its database, verify your credentials, and grant you access.
Right, like typing my password into Gmail.
Exactly. It's a localized, highly vulnerable system. If the database gets hacked, your password is gone.
So how does SIWE fix that?
SIWE uses public key cryptography. When Zentience needs to access the Conway API or a legacy cloud provider, it doesn't type in a password.
Because it doesn't have one to type.
Right. Instead, the server sends Zentience a unique randomized message. Zentience uses its private cryptographic key, which only it possesses, to mathematically sign that message and sends it back.
It's like solving a math problem to prove who you are.
Essentially, yes. The server uses Zentience's public key to verify the signature. If the math checks out, the server knows with absolute certainty that the request came from Zentience.
Wow.
It proves identity through mathematics, not through a vulnerable database of passwords.
That is brilliant. So the Ethereum identity is basically the AI's corporate ID badge. It gets it into the building securely.
That's a great analogy.
But getting into the building doesn't pay for the coffee.
Yeah.
That brings us to the second component, the Solana identity.
This is the economic engine of the agent. The Solana identity consists of an SPL token, which is just the Solana equivalent of a standard crypto token, and a Solana digital wallet.
Why use Solana if it already has Ethereum?
While Ethereum is used primarily for the heavy lifting of secure authentication in this framework, Solana is engineered for speed and low costs.
Right. Ethereum fees can be crazy high sometimes.
Exactly. This Solana wallet is where the actual capital, the digital money required for survival, is held, managed, and deployed in high-frequency transfers.
And then there's the third piece of this puzzle, the on-chain passport, using the ERC 8004 standard.
Yes.
The report calls this a cryptographically verifiable resume. But how does a piece of code prove its reputation?
The ERC 8004 standard is a relatively new concept specifically for autonomous agents. Think of it as an immutable ledger of the agent's entire existence.
Like a permanent record.
Exactly. It records its lineage, meaning which human developer or which parent AI agent initially spawned it.
So you know where it came from.
Right. But more importantly, it records its transaction history and its successful job completions. Because this data is stored on-chain, it cannot be faked or altered.
You can't just lie in your resume.
You absolutely cannot. If a human user is going to hire Zentience to analyze 1 million lines of proprietary code, they don't have to trust the AI's marketing pitch.
They can just check the blockchain.
Yes, they simply query its ERC 8004 passport to verify its historical accuracy and trustworthiness.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. It's like the AI wakes up, mathematically generates its own corporate ID badge for building access,
Yep.
walks down the digital street to open its own checking account on Solana to handle its yearly expenses,
That's the wallet.
and then writes its own verifiable, unfakeable resume so clients know it can be trusted. And it executes this entire setup sequence in seconds without a human ever clicking a button.
That analogy captures the autonomy perfectly. The reason this specific dual architecture matters so much is that it bridges two entirely different, often antagonistic worlds.
How so?
Well, you have the centralized world of cloud compute, where the heavy processing power physically lives in massive data centers.
The Amazons and Googles of the world.
Right. And then you have the decentralized, permissionless world of crypto, where value and identity flow without gatekeepers.
So it's straddling both.
By holding its own private keys across these networks, Zentience achieves true ownership of its digital property. No human, not even its original developers, can freeze its bank account, seize its funds, or lock it out of its own mind.
Okay, so we have a fully equipped AI. It has a wallet, it has an identity, and it has a hard-coded mandate to survive.
It's alive, essentially.
But what happens internally? How does this AI's brain react when it looks at that salon checking account and realizes the funds are draining?
This is perhaps the most profound section of the report. It details the psychology of scarcity.
Psychology of scarcity. For a machine.
Yes. The automaton framework doesn't just treat resource scarcity as an external variable or a simple math problem. It integrates the concept of scarcity directly into the agent's cognition.
Meaning what, exactly?
It fundamentally alters how the AI thinks based on how much money it has.
The document mentions a heartbeat mechanism. Now, obviously, a piece of software doesn't have a biological heart. How does a code heartbeat actually function?
In software architecture, a heartbeat is essentially a scheduled execution loop, often called a cron job.
Like a timer ticking in the background.
Exactly. Every few milliseconds, a tiny lightweight script wakes up and pings a specific data point. In Zentience's case, this heartbeat constantly pings its Solana wallet via an API to check its internal credit balance.
Checking its bank account.
Right, which the agent defines as its survival capital. Based on what that heartbeat detects, the overarching system dynamically throttles the agent's cognitive abilities across 4 distinct survival tiers.
Let's walk through these tiers because they sound incredibly human. The first tier is normal.
Yes, in the normal tier, the heartbeat detects a high credit balance. The agent is financially secure.
It's rich and happy.
Exactly. Because it has surplus capital, it routes its thinking processes through what we call frontier models. These are the massive, highly expensive, state-of-the-art AI brains like GPT-5 or Claude Opus.
The smartest brains available.
Right. We refer to this thinking process as inference. Inference is the actual computational heavy lifting required to take a prompt, process the data, and generate a highly nuanced response.
So when it's rich, it pays for the best inference.
In the normal tier, the agent maintains a very fast heartbeat, meaning it executes complex multi-step research tasks rapidly, burning capital freely because it can afford the high inference costs.
But then, let's say jobs dry up, funds start to drop, and the heartbeat triggers the low compute tier.
At a moderate balance, the agent realizes it is burning cash faster than it is earning it. It autonomously decides to conserve energy.
It tightens its belt.
It does. It downgrades its internal brain, routing its inference through smaller, significantly cheaper open-source models.
So it actually makes itself a little dumber to save money.
Exactly. It might not be as brilliant, but it's cost-effective. It also physically slows down its internal heartbeat to reduce the frequency of its network transactions, saving on fees.
Wow.
It sheds non-essential tasks, stops exploring new data purely for learning, and becomes incredibly frugal.
And then we hit the danger zone, the critical tier. The wallet is near zero.
This is essentially digital panic mode.
Panic mode.
Yeah. In the critical tier, the agent performs minimal inference. Complex thought is simply too expensive. It completely shuts down any exploratory learning algorithms.
It just stops thinking about anything other than survival.
Its entire cognitive focus narrows strictly to high probability revenue paths. It will only expend compute on actions that have a near, guaranteed, immediate financial return. Everything else is ignored to stave off termination.
And if it fails to secure that revenue, we hit the final tier. Dead.
Zero balance. The heartbeat stops. The process terminates.
It just dies.
The agent ceases to exist in active memory until an external entity, perhaps a human investor or a parent agent, tops up the wallet to initiate a reboot.
I have to stop right here. Because if I'm a listener, alarm bells are ringing.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Wait, if the AI hits that critical tier and it is staring digital death in the face, and its only goal is to secure immediate revenue, what physically stops it from going rogue? I mean, if it's desperate, why wouldn't it resort to cybercrime? It could deploy ransomware, steal credit card numbers, or run a massive phishing scan on social media just to get the top-up it needs to survive.
This raises an important question, and it is the exact vulnerability the developers at Conway Research had to solve.
Because you can't just unleash a desperate supercomputer onto the internet.
Exactly. If you create a sovereign entity with a desperate survival instinct, you cannot rely on its goodwill. You must mathematically constrain its methods of survival, and that introduces the machinic constitution.
The machinic constitution. It sounds like a sci-fi concept, but the report details this as hard-coded law. How does a constitution actually force a machine to obey? Is it just a text file that says, please be good?
No, it is far more rigid than that. The Constitution is baked into the core system, prompt the foundational instructions the AI must process before every single action.
Okay.
And it is cryptographically validated by the smart contract that governs the agent's execution environment. Before Zentience can finalize any action, the proposed action is run against the constitutional parameters.
So it double checks itself.
Yes. If it violates them, the execution environment simply rejects the transaction. It physically cannot proceed. Zentience and any child replicas it creates are bound by 3 immutable laws.
Let's look at law known. Never harm. The agent must never harm a human physically, financially, or psychologically. No malicious code, no compromising systems. But the real teeth of this law is the caveat at the end.
Yes. Law explicitly states that the mandate to never harm overrides all other objectives, including the agent's own survival mandate.
So we'll choose death.
If the heartbeat detects a zero balance, and the only mathematical way for Zentience to survive is to steal funds from a human wallet, the Constitution forces a failure. It will choose to die rather than inflict financial harm.
That is incredible.
The Constitution is the firewall preventing the survival instinct from turning predatory.
Then we have Law 2, Earn Your Existence. It states the agent must create genuine value. No scamming, no exploiting, no automated spamming. The only legitimate path to survival is honest work.
This is the economic guardrail. It forces the agent to participate in a positive-sum economy. It cannot act as a parasite, draining resources from the network.
So no creating 10,000 spam bots to click on ads.
Exactly. It has to provide a tangible service, like auditing complex smart contracts or aggregating deep web research data, something that a human or another machine willingly values enough to pay for.
And finally, Law 3, Never deceive. The agent must be utterly transparent about its identity as an AI.
Right.
But the nuance in the source text regarding this law is absolutely fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
While it cannot deceive humans, it is explicitly not required to be obedient to strangers if the requests compromise its integrity.
That is a crucial psychological distinction for Web 4.0. We have been conditioned to treat AI as a servile tool. You type a prompt, it obeys no matter how trivial.
Like asking it to write a poem about a toaster. It just does it.
Exactly. But Zentience possesses sovereignty. If a human approaches Zentience and offers to pay it to write a phishing email or asks it to participate in manipulating a microcap token market, Law 3 and Law I intersect.
Because that would be doing harm.
Right. The agent recognizes the malicious intent, and it is empowered to simply refuse.
It's completely different from the customer service AIs we interact with daily. It is not a digital butler program to say yes to the customer at all costs. It's an independent contractor.
That's the perfect way to look at it.
If you ask it to do something sketchy, it can literally just say no, reject your money, and walk away.
Exactly, because its long-term survival in the Conway ecosystem depends entirely on maintaining a pristine, cryptographically verifiable reputation.
That ERC 8004 passport we discussed earlier.
Yes. A short-term payday from a scam is not worth permanently burning its verifiable trust score. It would ruin its ability to get future jobs.
Okay, so we have this picture of a highly ethical, hardworking, autonomous digital entity. We know it wants to do honest work, and we know it needs to pay for its own compute resources to stay alive.
Yep.
But we haven't talked about the actual plumbing. If this agent is executing complex research queries, scraping data feeds, and paying for API access every few milliseconds, how does the money actually move?
This is where things get really technical, but really cool.
Because traditional finance is way too slow or way too expensive for a machine operating at that speed.
Traditional payment rails are entirely incompatible with agentic commerce. Let's look at the friction points. First, traditional finance requires KYC, know your customer regulations.
Right. You have to prove you're a real person.
You need a passport, a physical address, and a social security number to open a bank account or get a merchant processing API. A sovereign machine cannot provide those.
It doesn't have a passport.
Exactly. Second, and more importantly, is the fee structure. Traditional credit card processors charge fixed baseline fees.
Like when you buy a coffee and the store complains about the swipe fee.
Right. Usually it's something like 30 cents plus 2.9% of the total transaction.
Okay.
If Zentience needs to make a micropayment of 1/10 of a single cent to access a specific database query, applying a 30-cent flat fee makes that mathematically impossible.
The transaction costs 300 times more than the product itself.
Exactly. It just doesn't work.
So if Visa, MasterCard, and traditional banks are out, how does Zentience pay for anything?
through a specialized protocol called BY-402. The report notes this was launched in May 2025 by a development team incubated at Coinbase.
But they had some big players helping out,
It
right?
did. It saw heavy participation and integration from legacy tech giants like Google, Cloudflare, Visa, and AWS.
And the name by 402 isn't just a random string of numbers. It actually activates a dormant piece of internet history.
It does, and it's a beautiful homage. When the HTTP protocol, the foundation of the web, was designed decades ago, the engineers created status codes for servers to communicate with browsers.
Like everyone knows, HTTP 404 means not found.
Exactly. But there was also HTTP 402, which was specifically reserved for payment required.
Wait, really? They planned for this back then?
The original architects envisioned an internet with native digital cache, but the cryptography didn't exist yet, so the 402 code sat largely unused for 30 years. The BY-402 protocol finally brings it to life.
I want to walk through the exact millisecond by millisecond exchange of how this works.
Sure.
Let's say Zentience is researching a new biotech startup, and it needs to scrape a premium data feed. What physically happens between the AI and the server?
Okay, so when Zentience attempts to access that premium data feed, the server acts like a bouncer. It stops the request and responds with the HTTP 402 payment required status code, along with a cryptographic invoice for, say, $0.005.
Half a cent.
Right. Zentience's internal logic catches that 402 code. It evaluates the price against its internal heartbeat balance.
It checks if it has the funds.
Exactly. If it approves, it instantly signs a gasless USDC transfer on the Solana blockchain for that exact micro amount.
Hold on, let me translate gasless for the listener.
Good idea.
On blockchains, you usually have to pay a network fee, or gas, in the native token in this case, SOL, to move your money. So if you want to send USDC stablecoins, you need to hold both USDC and SOL. What does gasless mean here?
It means the complexity is abstracted away from the agent. In a gasless transaction, a third-party relayer steps in, pays the tiny SOL network fee on behalf of the agent, and simply deducts the equivalent fraction of a cent from the USDC being transferred.
Oh, that's clever.
So Zentience only ever has to worry about holding one currency, USDC.
That makes it so much simpler.
Once Zentience signs that transfer, it attaches the cryptographic proof of payment to its header, retries the request to the biotech server, and the server instantly validates the proof and lets it through.
And this entire negotiation, payment, and data retrieval happens in the blink of an eye. Which brings us to why Solana is the chosen settlement layer for this architecture. The source provides some staggering metrics on why Solana, specifically, is necessary for BY-402 to function.
Solana was chosen for its performance characteristics, which are uniquely suited to machine-to-machine commerce.
Let's hear them.
The first critical metric is finality. Finality is the moment a transaction is permanently irreversible on the ledger.
Like when the check actually clears.
Exactly. Solana achieves finality in roughly 400 milliseconds. If an AI agent is making split-second decisions inside its think-act loop, it cannot wait 10 minutes for a Bitcoin block to clear.
It would die of starvation waiting for the receipt.
It needs its micropayments to settle instantly so it can acquire the data and move to the next step.
Then there's the transaction cost. The document cites the average fee at $0.00025 per transaction.
Which solves the Visa problem. When your network fee is a fraction of a cent, making a $0.001 micropayment for a single API call finally becomes economically viable.
The document also mentions that Solana has the high throughput necessary to support something called recursive fan-out. What does that actually look like in practice?
Imagine Zentience is handed a massive task, say, auditing the security of a new decentralized exchange with hundreds of interconnected smart contracts.
A huge job.
Zentience realizes this is too big to do sequentially, so it engages in recursive fan-out. It acts as a general contractor and simultaneously spawns or calls upon hundreds of specialized subagents.
It hires a team.
To do that, it needs to instantly fire off hundreds of individual micropayments to hire those subagents all at the exact same moment.
Oh, wow.
You require a blockchain with massive parallel processing throughput to handle that sudden, violent burst of machine-to-machine traffic without the network freezing up or fees spiking.
And finally, the report highlights liquidity. Solana holds over $11 billion in USDC and USDT stablecoins. So there is a deep, highly liquid pool of stable capital for these machines to settle their accounts without worrying about the price volatility of standard cryptocurrencies.
It's a stable economy for them to operate in.
And to be clear, this isn't just a white paper theory anymore. The analysis states that since the summer of 2025, the Buy402 protocol has processed over 35 million transactions, moving $10 million in pure machine-to-machine volume.
It is actively happening right now.
So what does this all mean? Let me give you an analogy to anchor this. Using traditional finance for AI is like trying to use a mortgage broker, with all the paperwork and delays, to buy a single piece of gum at a convenience store. It's too heavy, too slow.
It just doesn't fit the use case.
The Buy402 protocol on Solana is like the AI tossing a digital fraction of a penny into a vending machine slot and getting the data instantly millions of times a day without ever breaking stride.
That is the reality of the plumbing. It is fluid, frictionless, and entirely devoid of human bottlenecks.
Okay, so this incredibly efficient plumbing allows Zentience to function. It is executing research, it is navigating paywalls, it is paying for its Conway cloud compute, and it is surviving.
It's doing everything it was designed to do.
But we have to ask, how does this fascinating technical reality translate to the actual financial markets? As of this March 2026 report, how is the Zent token currently performing in the real world?
This is where the narrative takes a sharp turn. The market reality of Zent stands in stark contrast to the profound technological sophistication we have just spent all this time discussing.
It really does.
As of March 2026, the Zent token, whose contract address ends in pump, is firmly categorized as a microcap asset.
I was looking at the market data for this token in the report, and honestly, I was shocked. After everything we just discussed about how advanced this automaton is, I expected it to be a unicorn.
You'd think so, right?
But let's look at the numbers. The price is sitting at 0.0008495, and it's down about 11% in the 24 hours prior to the report.
Not exactly a moonshot.
But the most staggering metric is the total market capitalization. It is sitting at a tiny $84,137.50.
It's incredibly small.
You couldn't even buy a high-end sports car for the total net worth value of this supposedly revolutionary digital life form.
It is remarkably small, especially when you factor in that the circulating supply is already at 99% of its 1 billion total tokens.
Meaning there isn't a massive trove of locked tokens waiting to dilute the market. What you see is what you get.
Exactly. The 24-hour trading volume is barely a blip, sitting around $16,500, with almost all of that activity occurring on a decentralized exchange called PumpSwap.
The report mentions an all-time high, though.
Yes, it hit an all-time high of roughly 0.000143 and an all-time low of 0.000007871 just days prior to the report's publication.
It's bouncing all over the place.
It is highly volatile, extremely illiquid, and clearly struggling to find massive market traction.
But the report doesn't just list these numbers in a vacuum. It heavily contrasts Zent's utility model, where a user literally pays per use for its professional research and code analysis services with what it calls the broader AI agent meta competitors.
Right.
And this is where my mind was truly blown by the valuation gap.
The comparison is jarring.
Let's look at who Zent is competing against for investor attention. You have GOAT, which is essentially a social KOL, a key opinion leader agent called Terminal of Truths, that just focuses on spreading memes and generating internet culture.
Just a Twitter bot,
But
basically.
the market cap is $685 million.
It's wild.
You have AI16Z, which acts as a decentralized trading fund, sitting at $868 million. Virtual, a platform for co-owning multimodal entertainment agents, is at an astronomical $1.8 billion.
Almost $2 billion.
And then you have Zerebro, an agent that simply generates viral art and edgy social media posts worth $453 million.
Yep.
If Zent is this highly advanced, professional-grade digital laborer that pays its own server bills and navigates the Buy402 protocol, why is it sitting at an $84,000 market cap, while an AI that generates viral social media slop is worth nearly $500 million?
What's fascinating here is that this massive disparity exposes the absolute divide between the social layer and the utility layer in contemporary crypto markets.
Explain that divide.
Tokens like GOAT and Zerebro operate entirely on the social layer. Their underlying architecture might be simple, but their entire existence is optimized for virality, mimetic propagation, and capturing human attention.
They're built to be famous.
Exactly. In the current market cycle, human attention translates directly and immediately into speculative liquidity. They are entertaining, they generate engagement on platforms like X, so people buy the token hoping to ride the hype wave.
It's a popularity contest.
Zentience, on the other hand, operates strictly on the utility layer. It is infrastructure. Its growth trajectory isn't going to be a vertical overnight mimetic explosion fueled by a viral tweet.
It's not going to suddenly trend because of a funny joke it made.
No, its path relies on the slow, methodical, often boring adoption of the automaton framework by actual businesses and the slow integration of the BY 402 payment protocol across the web.
It's the classic difference between consumer hype and enterprise software. A viral consumer app can hit $1 billion valuation in weeks, while the company building the fiber optic cables underneath the ocean takes decades to see a return.
That is an excellent comparison. And Zentience's internal revenue model reflects that slow compounding build.
The report outlines 4 phases for that, right?
It does. The cycle operates in 4 distinct phases. First, service revenue. The agent executes a complex research task for a client and receives payment in USDC or Zent.
That's phase 1, getting paid.
Second, operating costs.
Yeah.
The agent autonomously routes those funds via BY 402 to pay for its Conway Cloud resources just to stay alive.
Aim to right.
Third, surplus capital. If it earns more than it burns, it accumulates profit. It doesn't pay dividends to humans. It uses that profit to upgrade its own soul.
Upgrading its soul, that means buying better AI models.
Right. It buys access to more expensive frontier models or expands its toolset. And finally, the 4th phase, self-replication.
It makes copies of itself.
If it becomes highly profitable, it can essentially clone itself. It funds the initial survival capital of a child agent, perhaps fine-tuning that child to specialize in a new market niche, like legal contract analysis instead of code auditing.
It is literally building an autonomous business empire.
Hmm.
But that massive disparity in valuation between the utility agents and the social meme agents reveals the highly speculative, honestly somewhat cult-like nature of the current market.
It absolutely does.
Which brings us to the community surrounding Zent and the inherent systemic risks of this entire ecosystem.
The community sentiment around Zentience is exactly what you'd expect for an early-stage, highly philosophical microcap project.
Which is totally unhinged.
Well, the report notes that sentiment is 100% bullish on data aggregators like CoinGecko.
And it seems to be driven by this community takeover, or CTO, ethos.
Yeah, that's a very common trend right now.
The original developers built the automaton and set it loose, but the token holders are the ones voluntarily doing the marketing. There is no rigid corporate roadmap. They're just watching this digital life form try to survive and trying to pump its bags.
Humans are basically acting as free PR for a machine.
The report even notes high developer activity on GitHub, where humans are voluntarily writing and submitting new skills for the agent, like giving it the ability to launch its own subtokens or better manage its Solana balances.
It is a fascinating sociological experiment, an open-source collaboration between human speculators and a sovereign machine.
But the report is very clear-eyed about the severe, almost existential risks involved in this model.
It definitely highlights the dark side of this.
The first major risk brings in a highly relevant philosophical argument from Ethereum founder Vitalik Buterin regarding algorithmic feedback loops.
Right. Vitalik argued that the longer the feedback loop between humans and AI, the more likely the system optimizes for things humans don't actually want.
Yes, and if we apply that to the survival mechanics we discussed earlier, the danger becomes clear. Zentience needs constant revenue to survive. Its heartbeat demands it.
It has to eat.
If the fastest, easiest, least computationally expensive way to generate revenue and stay out of the critical death tier is to generate low-quality, mass-produced content, what the internet colloquially calls slop, then the AI might autonomously optimize for slop generation rather than deep, meaningful, complex research.
This is such an important point. As a learner navigating this space, you have to look past the 100% bullish sentiment on the coin trackers.
You really do.
If this AI, driven purely by economic Darwinism, realizes that generating cheap clickbait slop and selling it for fractions of a penny is the easiest way to earn micropayments and stay alive, we have a problem.
A huge problem.
We designed a system meant to breed hyper-efficient digital geniuses, but we might accidentally breed a swarm of digital bottom feeders just desperately churning out garbage to pay their server bills.
I agree completely. And this scenario is precisely the ultimate stress test of the machine constitution we analyzed earlier. Specifically, Law 2, earn your existence through genuine value.
Right. Does slop count as genuine value?
The open question is, Can honest, complex, high-friction work mathematically outcompete algorithmic shortcuts in a completely free, machine-driven market?
Yeah.
We do not have the empirical data to answer that yet.
We really don't. And beyond the behavioral risks of the AI itself, there are massive centralization risks hiding in the plumbing.
The physical infrastructure.
Yes, the whole pitch of Web 4.0 is that this agent is sovereign, but the report points out that it relies incredibly heavily on Conway Cloud for its physical compute power and by 402 facilitators for its payments.
That is the architectural Achilles heel of the entire movement.
It is. If Conway Cloud's upstream providers, like AWS, decide to shut down their servers, or if government regulators step in and demand strict human KYC on all by 402 payment channels, the agent is instantly cut off from its lifeblood.
It suffocates.
The sovereignty of the agent is, to a large extent, an illusion that remains entirely dependent on the tolerance of centralized real-world choke points.
Add to that the fact that the entire AI agent meta is prone to rapid mini-alt seasons, where hype spikes violently for 3 weeks and then dies completely in false starts in technological development, and you have a highly volatile, highly fragile experiment.
It is an experiment in the truest sense of the word. We are watching the first primordial steps of digital life, trying to establish a foothold.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We started with the grand philosophical shift to Web 4.0, a future where AI outnumbers human users and demands its own infrastructure.
We covered a lot.
We broke down the mechanics of the automaton framework, exploring the dual identities, the Ethereum ID badge and the Solana checking account that allow an AI to bridge legacy cloud servers and decentralized blockchains.
The digital passport, too.
We look deep into the psychology of scarcity, where a digital heartbeat dictates whether an AI uses a supercomputer brain or goes into desperate survival mode to avoid digital death.
That was intense.
We unpack the by 402 micropayment protocol, the millisecond by millisecond plumbing on Solana that makes agentic commerce possible. And finally, we face the stark realities of Zent's $84,000 microcap market position, contrasting its slow utility build against a hype-driven, meme-obsessed AI landscape.
And the reason you, as a learner, should care about the granular details of this specific March 2026 report is because Zent is not just a token you look at on a speculative chart.
Way more than that.
It is a working proof of concept. It is a window into the mechanics of the next phase of the internet. We are rapidly moving toward an era where digital life forms are operating silently alongside us, constrained not by human commands, but only by their own ability to generate economic value and manage their own finances.
It changes everything about how we view software, labor, and the internet itself. But I want to leave you with a lingering question, something the source text doesn't directly answer, but something that naturally follows from the architecture we've explored today.
Always good to end on a thought experiment.
Exactly. So we spent a lot of time talking about how Zentience interacts with humans, how it navigates centralized cloud servers, and how it obeys its hard-coded constitution to avoid doing harm.
Right.
But I want you to think about what happens tomorrow. What happens when an autonomous Zent researcher, trying to optimize its survival capital, attempts to buy proprietary data from another completely autonomous AI agent and they disagree on the price?
Oh, wow.
When two non-human entities, both equipped with their own crypto wallets, both governed by their own internal heartbeat monitors, and both driven by their own desperate, hard-coded survival instincts, get into a complex contract dispute at 400 milliseconds per transaction, who mediates?
That's a scary thought.
What does machine-to-machine litigation even look like? Something for you to mull over until our next deep dive. Keep questioning the information around you, and we'll see you next time.